Daniel Lanois is a sonic architect. Whether he's playing guitar, producing music for others, playing pedal steel, playing piano, he always finds a way to make sound convey a feeling or emotion. He's one of the greatest producers of all time, but he's also one of the greatest guitarists of all time. And I really want to dive into his guitar playing. So today we're going to talk about how Lanois approaches guitar, and then I'm going to write a song utilizing these approaches I talk about. But first, welcome. My name's Cole, but you can call me Cole G. I like telling stories through music. If that interests you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a lot. But alright, let's get into this video. Before we talk about Lanois' guitar playing, I want to talk a little bit about his career in music, because his career is super interesting. Lanois started producing and recording music in the early 1970s in his parents' home with his brother, Bob Lanois. Bob and Daniel Lanois recorded a wide variety of musicians, including the Canadian children's musician, Raffi. The two of them recorded a bunch of albums there, and eventually they ended up getting a space in an old Hamilton public library where they set up a full studio. In the decades that followed, Lanois would go on to produce so many classic records, such as So by Peter Gabriel, all of the classic U2 albums such as The Joshua Tree and Achtung Baby, Bob Dylan's Time Out of Mind. The list goes on and on. You really have to look at his Wikipedia page and check out all his credits because it's truly incredible. I love so many of Daniel Lanois' records. I don't really have a favorite because there's so many good ones, but one that I think is really overlooked is this. This is Martha and the Muffins, This is the Ice Age. Martha and the Muffins was a Toronto band that was around in the late 1970s and the 80s. If you're not from Canada, the song that you likely know them from is Echo Beach, which is one of the best guitar riffs of all time. But this record in particular is amazing. Everything about it is awesome. I absolutely love the artwork. It's just so sleek and so minimalist. I think it's wonderful. But the production on here is really great. I believe this is Daniel's first rock album that he produced. I could be wrong, so let me know in the comments down below if I am. But there are so many great songs on here, and one in particular called Swimming is just phenomenal. There's a really cool automotive loop that opens the song, and the guitar playing on here is very Robert Fripp adjacent. If you're into 80s post-punk or new wave music, I think you would really like this album. This album is actually from my dad's record collection. He introduced me to it when I was really young. So thank you, Dad, for showing me this. This is awesome. Besides just producing albums, Daniel Lanois also helped pioneer the genre known as ambient music with Brian Eno. He worked with Brian Eno on a lot of his really classic albums and really helped push that genre of music forward. And on top of everything, Daniel Lanois is also a solo artist and has put out many solo albums. All of them I think are really great and really unique. My two favorites are Acadie, which was his debut, and Heavy Sun, which came out in 2021, I believe. It was probably my favorite album of the year. It's a really cool sounding album. It's produced wonderfully, of course, because it's Daniel Lanois. It's really great. He also produced and wrote some songs for the Red Dead Redemption 2 soundtrack, which is just awesome. Lanois' career has been full of left turns, and him doing this, it makes so much sense, but that's about as brief of a rundown of Lanois' career that I can do. The man's accomplished so much and done so much. He really has lived a truly interesting life in music. I highly encourage you to check out his solo music and the music that he's produced. You won't be disappointed. When Daniel Lanois plays guitar, nobody sounds like him, and that's because of his touch and how he physically plays the guitar. As a kid, Daniel started learning the pedal steel guitar, which is a very complex instrument to play, and arguably he's one of the best pedal steel guitarists in the world as well, but we won't talk about it too much in this video. When he started playing actual guitar, he applied a lot of the techniques that he knew from pedal steel to the actual guitar, which makes him sound incredibly unique. If you watch clips of Daniel playing pedal steel guitar, you notice that he moves his right hand a lot around to create different textures and different picking sounds. And he does the same thing when he plays electric guitar. He always finger picks and never uses a pick, but the way he finger picks is differently than almost anyone I've ever seen do it. Though he does do traditional finger picking, he'll use the back of his hand, the side of his hand, his nails. He'll use everything he can to create different textures with guitar, which truly sets him apart from so many others. He approaches his picking the way that a composer would pick a different instrument for a part of a score, which kind of makes sense because he has scored some movies before. If you watch 5 different videos of Lanois playing guitar, you'll see him doing a ton of different approaches. One that I see him doing a lot is doing little soft strums in between chords to kind of create a rhythmic texture. Check it out. This creates a really interesting dynamic contrast with his playing, because he's not playing full blast all the time, but when he does bring that note out, it comes through so much harder than it would if he played 5 notes loud before it. The softness to the loudness is really cool. I felt really inspired by Lanois' playing and have started playing less with a pick and really experimenting with my hands when I'm playing. And honestly, I've been really enjoying it a lot. I find it freeing and it makes you think differently. You can't play really as fast as you could with a pick, so you have to accommodate and do different things with your playing. It's a really cool technique, though nobody can do it like Lanois can. And I don't think you should try to emulate him per se. You should try and do your own thing with these techniques. The best summarization I've heard about Lanois' playing comes from big rec guitarist and fellow Canadian Ian Thornley. Check this out.
And I was explaining this at the clinic. A lot of the guitar players, there's a magic to what they do, and I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's even Daniel Lanois. Like I remember seeing him live, and I've seen them all, and Lanois blew me away. And he was playing a G chord with his thumb, and he does this thing, this sort of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada warble of the neck.
Right.
That, you know, sort of Bill Frisell kind of does it, although he's not Canadian. But there's a thing that those guys do. And it just makes the notes kind of do this thing. I was like, oh my God, and just sort of thumbing through these beautiful melodies, and but I don't know how you have to be him to do it.
When Daniel plays guitar, piano, or lap steel, he really picks his notes wisely. Listen to the first 3 notes of the maker. It's only 3 notes, but for me it makes me feel something and really draws me in. This almost minimalist less is more approach that Lanois uses for guitar and his other instruments really help catch the audience attention. While you might naturally think that the best way to get an audience's attention is to play 1,000,000 notes per second, I argue that playing less notes and having the audience at the edge of their seat is a better way of captivating them. And Lanois does this so well. His arrangements always captivate me, and if you watch live performances that he does, you can see the audience is drawn in as well. With this minimalist approach, Lanois utilizes space to help tell a story and carry an arrangement. The notes that he's not playing are just as important as the notes that he is playing. So if you want to take that approach to your guitar playing, don't feel pressure to play all the time. It's something that I feel pressure to do lots, especially when I'm playing live and I want to go 1,000,000 miles per hour, but you don't need to do that. You can really sit back and let the other members of your band or your drum machine or your backing track carry the track, so that when you do come in, you actually add something of value to the piece rather than just showing off. There are so many songs and albums in his discography that I could point you to that utilize space and minimalism, but honestly, I encourage you to watch some live videos of him on YouTube, and you'll really see it in the band context, just how when he doesn't play, what happens and how the story keeps being told. Another aspect of Lanois' guitar playing that's super important is his actual tone, because that really helps set him apart from so many other guitarists. So let's now talk about Lanois' approach to tone. Nobody sounds like him. He truly has one of the most unique sounds and beautiful sounds in my opinion. His tone surrounds you and feels like you're being wrapped in a warm blanket. It's just amazing. Daniel Lanois' tone is arguably just as important as his actual physical guitar playing. When Daniel Lanois talks about his tone in interviews, such as in Rick Beato's amazing interview with him, which you all should listen to, it's definitely a must listen for musicians and producers alike. Daniel talks about how he wants his tone to fit into specific sonic palettes. Listening to him talk about it, he almost has a scientific way of thinking about it. He thinks in terms of EQ frequencies, so fitting a space in the mix like the low mids, or the high mids, or the high end. If you don't know much about recording and don't understand what I mean by low mids, mids, and high frequencies, imagine that you have a shelf. On the left side you have a plant on it, and on the right side you have a picture. But in the middle you have nothing. It doesn't feel balanced. What Daniel's essentially saying with his guitar approach is that he wants to put stuff in the middle, on the right side, on the left side, so that it all balances out and creates an equal level of everything in the mix. Some of my favorite examples of Lanois' tone and guitar playing, honestly, are on Emmylou Harris's Wrecking Ball. That album is fantastic. It's so well mixed and recorded, and his playing and his tones are just so phenomenal. Go listen to it, it's amazing. Daniel's clean guitar sound on Wrecking Ball is so nice. It's very dark and moody, but it's not muddy or full of low ends. It's a very precise sound, and it doesn't have too much high end, so it just fits really nicely into the frequency spectrum. Approaching your instrument in a way that it fits a certain frequency range can make your whole track just sound bigger, because you can layer everything together and then stuff doesn't overlap, and then everything just sounds bigger and better in the end. And this album is a perfect example of that. But also on this album, Daniel plays a super psychedelic solo on the Jimi Hendrix cover, May This Be Love. This solo takes you to another planet. The way he utilizes delay, specifically the Korg SD3000, to kind of circle you in the mix is truly remarkable. And the fuzzy guitar sound doesn't clash with the drums or vocals or anything. It just fits so well. So how does Daniel get his guitar sound? Well, typically he doesn't use many pedals, usually just a Morley volume pedal, which has an optical circuit in it like a LA2A compressor, into a Korg SD3000 or similar delay, and then right into an amp. He doesn't use overdrives at all. Instead, he relies on cranking the amp to break up. As for amps, he used to use Vox AC30s a lot, but now he tends to use more so old Fender Vintage Deluxes, which is what Neil Young, one of his heroes, actually introduced to him. His tone is pretty hard to get at home unless you're able to crank a tube amp or you have an attenuator. Modeling you can get fairly close, but nothing will beat the sound that he gets. Hey, it's Editing Cole G here. I wanted to take an extra moment and talk to you a little bit more about Daniel's approach to guitar tone. The reason why Daniel cranks his guitar amp so much is actually because of Jimi Hendrix and the song Foxy Lady, specifically that intro section. Daniel has stated that he cranks old tube amps because the harmonics in the sound better to him, and that the Foxy Lady intro was the catalyst for this because it's full of dynamics. Because Daniel's amps are cranked so loud and have so much tube-driven overdrive, he relies on how hard and soft he picks with his right hand to control how much gain he allows in the signal. Even though you can't sound like Daniel Lanois, you can still approach guitar more like he does. So when you're writing a song and you have a drum loop per se, try to think of the frequencies that guitar can actually fit into, rather than just playing guitar with any old sound. Really think about where you want to sit in the mix. What frequencies do you want to sound like? Do you want it to have lots of high end and be very bright? Or do you want it to be dark, moody, but not muddy, and just kind of approach your guitar like that. The other thing is use a volume knob on your guitar. It will help you so much, and honestly, it can save you money. If you just run more overdrive on your amp or through a pedal and turn your volume down, you could probably save yourself buying another pedal or a boost pedal. It's a really simple trick that so many people utilize really well, like Blake Mills, Mason Stoops, and of course, Daniel Lanois. Alright, so we've talked about how Lanois plays guitar and how he approaches picking notes and his tone. So now what I'm going to do is write a song that's influenced by those three categories. I'm not trying to copy a Lanois song in particular, I'm more so trying to apply these things to my own playing and my own songwriting and see what happens. Because I think it's cool to be challenged with songwriting and have different creative goals with a song. So having said all that, let's go to the studio and let's write something. Alright, so that was the song I wrote for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now though, I want to talk about how I utilize the techniques and approaches I talked about earlier in the video to make the song. The first approach I utilized was not using a pick and experimenting with different picking styles with my hand and fingers. Honestly, this was super fun. I thought I was able to get some really cool unique textural sounds that I maybe wouldn't be able to get if I used a pick. I think for the sound and vibe of the song, not using a pick worked really well. Secondly, I limited how many notes I actually played because I wanted to really let the notes that I chose shine. This was really fun to do as well because I feel like I played too many notes too often, so forcing myself to only play a few notes really was fun and a different experience for me that I'm definitely going to continue doing after this video. Lastly, let's talk about how I approach my guitar tone for this video. This is the first video on my channel that I didn't use a modeler at all. I initially tried recording with a modeler for this video, but honestly, I couldn't get the vibe or the tone exactly how I wanted it. So what I decided to do was pull out the SM57 and my Warm Audio WA14 and mic up my Mesa Boogie Fillmore 50. And honestly, I think it's the best tone I've had in any of my videos. It's definitely the tone that I try to chase with modelers. I really realize how much more I prefer tube amps to modelers, and I think I'll do a video on that down the road. But honestly, playing with a tube amp really made the difference for this song. Even though the amp was mic'd up in my bedroom and I was listening to it through studio monitors, which I would do if I was recording with a modeler as well, I just felt that I had way more control over my tone, and honestly I was so much more happy with the results of the tone in this video. I ran my pedal board in front of my Mesa Boogie Fillmore 50 and used a Line 6 DL4 and my Boss Space Echo pedal to get a real swirling kind of delay sound similar to Daniel Lanois. I feel I was only partially able to utilize Lanois' approach to tone because I couldn't crank my tube amp at all because I don't want to piss off my neighbors. So unfortunately I had to run it pretty quiet, but honestly I was happy with the results, and going back to analog machinery felt really cool. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope you're able to apply some of the guitar techniques and approaches I talked about today into your own playing, and I hope you check out Daniel Lanois' music if you haven't already, or check out some of the music that he's produced. Daniel Lanois is a sonic architect whose contributions to music have made music so much better. Anyways, that's all I got for today, but now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite Daniel Lanois produced album? What's your favorite Daniel Lanois solo album? Do you have any stories about Daniel Lanois? Let me know in the comments and let's have a discussion. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. Anyways, thanks again for watching. My name's Kolji, and I'll see you in the next one.